So today is the sixth day of myself transacting the lesson classification of elements and periodicity in properties, chapter 3, class 11 science chemistry. Okay. Now, till yesterday, I was talking about the variation of the various periodic properties in the periodic table, like ionization, potential, atomic size, electron affinity, electronegativity. Okay. Now, there is one more thing I need to clear with you all with regard to electronegativity in today's class. Now, you must be knowing what is electronegativity. It is the tendency of an atom of an element to attract the bonding or shared pair of electrons towards itself in a covalent bond. Okay, and this electronegativity concept, it is so important. It is important for us to understand and help us to know and remember how and why chemical or organic reactions take place. Okay, based on that. So now, if you look at the next slide with regard to electronegativity and bonding. Now, from this concept, we can know electronegativity tells us what kind of bonding we have, whether it is an ionic bond or a covalent bond. Okay. So, based on this electronegativity difference between the two elements forming a bond, the more ionic is the bond. Okay. So, typical calculations have been shown with some examples in this table over here. If the electronegativity difference range is greater than 2, then the bonding type is ionic. Example is lithium fluoride. Okay. If the electronegative difference range is between 0.5 to 2.0 on the Pauling scale, so it is a polar covalent bond. Otherwise, the electronegative difference values, uh, 0.5. It is less than 0.5, then all of them fall under covalent bonding. Okay. So this you must remember. Electronegative difference greater than 2.0 will give an ionic bond. Between 0.5 to 2.0 will give a polar covalent bond, and less than 0.5 will give us a covalent bond. So this will help us understand what type of bonding exists. Now, looking at the next slide, there are two scales with the help of which the electronegativity concept has been made much more clearer. And the two scales are Mulliken scale and the Pauling scale. Now, the Mulliken scale simply considers the electronegativity of an element as the average of the ionization potential and the electron affinity of that element. For example, according to this vertical Mulliken scale, the electronegativity, it is equal to the average of the ionization energy and electron affinity. This is the formula to get the electronegativity of an element on basis of Mulliken scale. But the more consistent, the better one, the Pauling scale is most commonly used. So the Pauling scale of electronegativity is equal to Mulliken scale divided by a factor 2.8. So I'll come to this in detail now. Now, according to Pauling scale, of electronegativity, okay, the electronegative difference, if I write a formula, XA minus XB, this means electronegative difference between two atoms A and B. The formula is given as 0.208 EAB minus under root electronegativity of AA into electronegativity of BB. So let me explain this formula first. This is under square root. Okay. Now here in this formula, this XA means electronegativity of atom A. XB means electronegativity of atom B. Okay. And this EA EAB means bond energy of AB bond, bond energy of the bond AB, okay, in the molecule AB, okay. Then EAA will become bond energy of the bond AA, and EBB means bond energy of the bond BB. Okay, so these are the various abbreviations used in the formula. Okay, so by applying this formula, we can get the value of the electronegativity difference, after which
Oh,
it is possible. Yes,
you made a mistake over there. So that's EAA1.
yeah, EAA. This EAA means the bond energy of the bond between A and B. The molecule of AB, no, the molecule of AB, the bond which is formed between A and B, this bond, its electronegativity, the bond energy. I'm talking about the bond energy. That means with which A and B are held together. That is the bond energy of the bond AB, or this one is A, sorry, this is A, okay. This is A, okay. Is that clear now? Is that clear? Okay. Now, this was the Pauling scale. From the Pauling scale, what do we come to know? We come to know the electronegativity difference. We come to know the electronegativity difference, after which we come to know whether a given bond in a molecule is ionic or covalent or polar covalent. Okay. Now, if you look at the Mulliken scale, according to the Mulliken scale, as I have stated earlier, according to the Mulliken scale, according to the Mulliken scale, the electronegativity of any atom, you can talk about any atom, the electronegativity of any atom, it can be A or B, whatever, okay, that is equal to the average, the arithmetic mean, the arithmetic mean of the ionization energy and electron affinity, according to Mulliken scale. That means you can, if you know the ionization energy, if you know the electron affinity of an atom, add them up, divide by 2, you get the value of that atom on the Mulliken scale. Okay, so here it is possible to find out according to Mulliken scale whether it is a purely covalent bond or a purely ionic bond, or 50% covalent, 50% ionic. Okay, so this was one concept which I wanted to clear you in today's class. Now, after that, let us move to the next slide in this chapter. This is the summarization of the periodic table in metallic and non-metallic characteristics. Okay, metallic and non-metallic characteristics. If you see very carefully in this slide over here, metallic character is more this side, okay, and non-metallic character is more this side, okay, across the period. And down the group, if you see down the group, the metallic character is increasing, but up the group, the non-metallic character is increasing. Okay, so this you have to remember. Okay, now why metallic? Why non-metallic? Metals, they lose electrons easily. Metals, they lose electrons easily because they have lower ionization enthalpies. Okay, whereas non-metals, they do not lose electrons, rather they receive electrons. They receive electrons. That's why they have higher electron affinity values. Okay, so based on those reasoning, this variation needs to be remembered by all of us. Okay, now come to the next slide. Just for the sake of revision, some factors quickly affecting atomic radius. There are factors that affect the atomic radius, the size of the atom, which causes atoms having different sized across the group and down the period. And the important ones are screening effect and nuclear charge. Screening effect plays a very important role on the atomic radius as well as the nuclear charge. Okay. Now the ionic radii, which I have explained in the previous classes in the beginning only. The ionic radii corresponds to the radii of ions in ionic crystals. The ionic radius may be defined as the effective distance from the center of the nucleus to the ion up to which it exerts its influence on its electronic cloud. So that distance is called ionic radius. So this, sometimes the questions are asked, what is ionic radius, define it, or what is ionic radii, define it. Okay, then moving to the next, with regard to effective nuclear charge, to clear the concept of the effect of the nucleus on the electron cloud present in the subshell or the valence shells. Now, the effective nuclear charge, often symbolized as Z effect, ZEFF, or Z star, is the net positive charge experienced by an electron in a multi-electron system or an atom. Okay. The term effective is used because the shielding effect of negatively charged electrons prevents the electrons which are present inside, they shield, they prevent the higher orbital electrons from experiencing the full nuclear charge by the repelling effect of the inner layer electrons. So that's why we use the word over here, effective. Now, just have a look at the side over here. The decrease in the force of attraction exerted by the nucleus on the valency electrons is due to the presence of electrons where? In the inner shells. There are outer electrons. So these outer electrons, what you call effect of this nucleus on the outer electron is decreased by the presence of what? Electrons in the inner shells, called the screening effect or the shielding effect. Much in a much better way or properly. Now, the core electrons are generally closer to the nucleus than valence electrons, and they are considered to shield the valence electrons from the full electrostatic attraction of the nucleus. So this was just to explain you the meaning of effective nuclear charge over here. You can see in the diagram over here also, electrons outside have no effect for the electron of interest. The positively charged nucleus is there in the center. Electrons in between cancel some of the nuclear charge. Okay, this is the electron I'm talking about, interest, which loses the effective nuclear charge, the effect of the nucleus on it, because of the inner electron present just closer to the nucleus. Okay, now let us go to the next slide. Now this is one important chemical property variation, which is called periodicity of valency or oxidation states. Periodicity of valency or oxidation state. So remember over here, higher the oxidation state of an atom, if the oxidation state of an atom is higher, note that it will have greater electronegativity. It will have greater electronegativity. Moreover, the oxidation state of an element in a particular compound can be defined as the charge acquired by its atom on the basis of electronegative consideration from other atoms in the molecule. So remember that over here, oxidation state, higher the oxidation state of an atom, greater will be its electronegativity. Suppose if I compare Fe plus 3 and Fe plus 2. Okay. So here, which one has higher oxidation state? Fe plus 3. So definitely its electronegativity will be, it will be high. Its electronegativity will be high. Okay. So in a group from top to bottom, the oxidation state remains same, with few exceptions are there. For variable valence or variable oxidation states. Otherwise, in a period, the normal oxidation state first increases and then it decreases. It becomes plus 1, it goes to plus 2, plus 3, then 4, then minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, and then 0. So, in a period, along the period, the oxidation state normally first increases and then it decreases. 1, 2, 3, 4, minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, 0, and so. Okay. Now, after that, let us move to the next slide. The same thing, periodicity of valence or oxidation states. Group 1 elements plus 1, group 2 elements plus 2, and now over here the D block elements tend to have more than one oxidation number. That's why they have variable valence. That's why they exhibit variable valency. Okay, D block elements. Then 13 plus 3, 14 is either 2 or 4, because in 14 we have carbon, silicon, germanium, tin, and lead. So tin and lead, they show two oxidation states, plus 2 and plus 4. 15 is minus 3, 16 is minus 2, 17 is minus 1, and 18 is 0. So, and if you talk about the lanthanoids and the actinoids, the oxidation state for lanthanoids, it's more predominantly plus 3, and actinoids have variable 3 plus and 4 plus. So please try to learn this. learn this periodicity of valence or oxidation states from this chart only. It is a very good chart which can help you remember the oxidation states of the various groups of elements and the blocks. Okay. Now, further moving to the next slide, let us come to the anomalous periodic properties of the second period elements. The second period elements. What are the second period elements? Can you name some second period elements? Elements belong to the second period. Tell me. The first one I have written over there. First one I have
Lithium,
written. After
Lithium,
lithium comes which one?
beryllium,
beryllium,
After beryllium comes. Then,
boron,
then,
boron,
carbon,
then,
carbon,
carbon,
then,
nitrogen, oxygen,
then
nitrogen,
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 oxygen, then fluorine. So these
then
elements,
carbon,
lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, these elements, which are the first elements in these groups, in this period, you can talk about second period. These elements show a slightly different character. They show anomalous properties, periodic properties, than the other elements in those respective groups. Okay, the reasons are here. All of these have small size atoms comparatively. All of these comparatively they have high electronegativity and they have a large value of charge by radius ratio. If you compare the charge by radius ratio, they have a large value. All of these. Now these elements also have only 4 valence orbitals available, that is 2p, 2s and 2p for bonding as compared to the 9 available 3s, 3p, 3d to the other members of the respective group. So their maximum covalence is 4. Maximum covalency of this second period elements, it is coming to 4 only. Okay, it can have 4 bonds around it. So because the orbitals which is available to them is 2s and 2p only, d orbital is not available. That is the reason they exhibit anomalous behavior in their periodic properties. Now coming to the next slide over here, the first element, in group 1, if you look at group 1, the first element over there, it is lithium, electronic configuration 2s1, 1s2, 2s1. Now group 1a elements, alkali metals, anomalous behavior of lithium. Let us discuss this. It has extremely small size of both lithium atom as well as lithium ion. It has highest ionization enthalpy of lithium atom amongst all alkali metals. It is difficult to remove the electrons from the valence shell. Highest electronegativity of lithium amongst alkali metals, amongst all this. It has strong metallic bonding. Highest polarizing power of lithium ion among alkali metals. All these lead to increased tendency to form covalent bond formation and solvation. So it can be dissolved easily. Because of all these characteristics, it is a metal. It should exhibit ionic characters, ionic properties when it combines with other elements. But because of all these small size, high ionization enthalpy, high electronegativity, strong metallic bonding, and high polarizing power, because of all this, it has a increased tendency to form covalent bonds. Okay, and moreover, it has increased covalent character of lithium, results increased solubility in organic solvents. So because of covalent character, we find that compounds of lithium are soluble in organic solvents as well. So this is the discussion of the anomalous behavior of lithium, which is the first element which shows anomalous behavior. Now moving to the next slide over here, the next element is beryllium. The symbol is B. Anomalous behavior of beryllium. It has again exceptionally small atomic and ionic sizes. High ionization enthalpy, small size leads to form large covalent compounds. Oxides and hydroxides are amphoteric in nature. Important. Oxides and hydroxides of beryllium are amphoteric, means they show acidic property also, they say basic property also. Now beryllium does not exhibit coordination number more than 4, as in its valence shell there are only 2 orbitals, that is 2s and 2p, okay, in the valence shell. That's why it is showing anomalous behavior. The d orbital is absent. Then moving to the next element, that is boron, which shows anomalous property. Again, the reason over here for boron showing anomalous properties, it has small size, high ionization enthalpy, more electronegativity, absence of d orbitals. Okay, that is number one. In the family, only boron shows allotropy. Please remember this, important. In this family, only boron shows allotropy. Existence of boron in more than one physical forms. Okay, carbon shows allotropy in the other group. Maximum covalency of boron is 4, while for other it is 6. Okay, so maximum covalence is 4 because available orbitals are 2s and 2p only. Okay, pure boron does not, this is does not, DOES, does not react with water and HCl. Remember this also. If we take pure boron, okay, it does not react with water or hydrochloric acid dilute. Okay, so that was boron. Then moving to the next element, that is carbon, most important one. Anomalous behavior of carbon. Now, carbon shows anomalous behavior because of its smaller size, high electronegativity, higher ionization enthalpy, and unavailability of d orbitals. Okay, this is common for all of them. Carbon forms p-pi multiple bonds. When p orbitals overlap sideways, that's why we get when the p orbitals overlap sideways like this. Okay, if it is px of the two atoms, one atom of carbon, another atom of carbon, this overlapping sideways, that time it forms pi bonds. Okay, if the orbitals overlap this way, head on, this way, if this is p orbitals, px, if they overlap head on, then it forms sigma bonds. So here carbon forms p-pi multiple bonds with itself and with other atoms of small size and high electronegativity. So that's why we have carbon-carbon double bond, carbon-carbon triple bond, carbon-oxygen double bond, carbon-sulfur double bond, okay, and carbon-nitrogen triple bond, and cyanides, okay. So remember this, it forms carbon pi-pi, p-pi multiple bonds with itself or other elements like oxygen, sulfur, and nitrogen. Now, heavier elements do not form p-pi bonds because their atomic orbitals are too large and diffuse to have effective overlapping. So, if you try to form, if you try to include other higher elements, heavier elements to form p-pi bond, it is difficult because higher atomic orbitals, they are too large and they diffuse to have effective overlapping. Overlapping is among higher orbitals only. It is possible there will be d orbitals also entering into overlapping. That's why it is not possible. Next one is carbon atoms have the tendency to link with one another through covalent bonds to form chains and rings. This property we have already learned in class 10. It is called catenation. It can form chains, it can form rings. That's why we have plenty of alicyclic compounds, aromatic compounds, okay, non-aromatic compounds, okay, because carbon-carbon bonds are very, very strong because of this property of catenation, right? The catenation order is given over here. Carbon is very, very high, then silicon, then germanium and tin are very close. But lead does not show catenation. Amongst carbon, silicon, germanium, tin, and lead, this lead will not show property of catenation. Maximum property of catenation is shown by carbon. Little bit is silicon, germanium, and tin. It is similar. They show little bit of catenation property, but lead it is zero. Now, due to the property of catenation and p-pi bond formation, carbon is able to show allotropic forms also. Allotropes of carbon, bone, charcoal, all those things are there. No? Diamond, graphite, all these are forms of carbon. Okay, different structural forms they have in the physical existence. That's called allotropic form. Okay, so these are the reasons for the anomalous behavior of carbon. Okay, now moving to the next slide, let us have a look at the next slide. Anomalous properties, anomalous behavior of nitrogen, the next element, nitrogen group 15. Okay, again the reason is given. Nitrogen has small size, high electronegativity, high ionization potential, electron affinity, and non-availability of d orbitals. Okay, this is common for all. It forms p-pi bonds with itself. Nitrogen exists as diatomic, and one triple bond is also possible. if you combine nitrogen, another nitrogen, there is a triple bond, okay, and it forms a possibility of nitrogen, oxygen, double bond is also possible, okay. Then nitrogen exists as a diatomic molecule, gas at room temperature, okay, diatomic molecule. Due to the ability of nitrogen atom to form p-pi triple bond with another nitrogen atom, okay, bond enthalpy is very high. Bond enthalpy, it requires a lot of energy to break the nitrogen triple bond. Now pp AS, this phosphorus, arsenic, antimony bond have single bonds, whereas bismuth forms metallic bonds. So if you look at the other element, nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenic, antimony, and bismuth, nitrogen is forming a triple bond, phosphorus is forming a single bond, arsenic also single bond, okay. Antimony also single bond with antimony, but bismuth it forms a metallic bond. Bismuth with other bismuth atoms it forms a metallic bond. So these are the anomalous properties of nitrogen as discussed. Now, after this, come to the chemical properties of anomalous behavior of oxygen. The next element is oxygen. The anomalous behavior of oxygen is due to its small size again and high electronegativity, unavailability of d orbitals. The absence of d orbitals in oxygen limits its covalence to 4 only, and in practice rarely exceeds 2. On the other hand, in case if other elements of the group, the valence shells can be expanded and covalence exceeds sometimes 4 also. Okay, so these are the properties, chemical properties with regard to the anomalous behavior of oxygen due to its small size, unavailability of d orbitals, all those factors come over here. Okay, then moving to the next slide, that is the next element is fluorine, anomalous behavior of fluorine. Again, it is because of small size, highest electronegativity. Among all the elements discussed so far, fluorine has the highest electronegativity. It has low FF bond dissociation enthalpy. That means it is easier to break the fluorine-fluorine bond, and non-availability of d orbitals. Okay, reactions of fluorine are exothermic because the bond enthalpy is low. Hydrogen fluoride is liquid while others are gases. Okay, hydrogen fluoride, the compound, hydrofluoric acid is a liquid while other compounds with fluorine are gases in nature. Okay, so this brings us to the end of this anomalous behavior of the second period elements. Okay, please go through them in detail properly. You can check the textbook also for this variation with regard to their oxidation states as well. Okay, now moving to the next slide in this chapter, there is one more topic to be discussed, which is called a diagonal relationship. Now, elements of the second period in the periodic table, they bear a similarity in properties which are placed diagonally opposite to them in the third period, like lithium and magnesium. They are diagonally opposite elements. They have similarity in properties. Beryllium and aluminum also, boron and silicon also, carbon and phosphorus not so prominent, but it is possible. So basically, remember this pair: lithium, magnesium, beryllium, aluminum, and boron, silicon. These elements of the second period, which are diagonally placed with the period 3 elements, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, they are said to exhibit a diagonal relationship. Okay, and they have similar properties. Okay, now if you look at the next slide over here, the cause. What is the main cause of diagonal relationship? In moving along the period from left to right, the electronegativity, we know it increases, while in descending a group, electron positivity of the element increases. These two effects tend to cancel each other in moving diagonally from top left to bottom right. That is the main reason over here for the diagonal relationship of these elements. Okay. Therefore, the elements diagonally related in this way tend to have similar properties. They form similar compounds, though having, if they form compounds, they can be covalent compounds. Okay, because though the valence is different for all of them. Okay, so that is the main reason for elements of the second period placed diagonally to the third period elements having similar properties over here. Because what is cancelling over here? the electronegativity and the electropositivity of these elements are cancelling. They have almost similar sizes. Atomic size of lithium, magnesium similar, beryllium and aluminum similar, boron and silicon they are similar. So these factors attribute to their similarity in chemical properties as well. Okay, now moving to the next slide over here, diagonal relationship, acidic and basic nature of oxides. Now here let's take beryllium and aluminum. Okay, this beryllium and aluminum, they form amphoteric oxides, ionic with covalent character both. They have ionic character also. The oxides of beryllium and aluminum, they have covalent character also. But if you come this side, the oxides of lithium, magnesium, they are ionic. Okay. But if you come this side, the oxides of other elements are mainly acidic in nature and they form covalent compounds. Now react with both acids and bases. The amphoteric oxide, they react with both acid and bases to form salt and water. Okay. So this was a diagonal relationship comparison, acidic and basic nature of oxides on the basis of these characteristics. Then moving to the next table over here, acidic and basic nature of oxides. If you see over here, there is basic oxides, all this color which you can see, all basic oxides over here, basic oxides. Okay, amphoteric, amphoteric, amphoteric oxides. This one. And then acidic oxides. Rest is what? Acidic oxide. Green color is all acidic oxides. So this chart is also important for you because from here you get to know which are the oxides from the periodic table which are either basic or amphoteric or acidic in nature. Now, with regard to this periodic property, the periodic trends in the properties of the compounds of alkali metals. If you see over here, let me explain this with the help of the next slide over here. The basic character of the hydroxides, the basic character and solubility of hydroxides. I'm going to write it down and explain it. Okay. Now the order, you can form lithium hydroxide, then sodium hydroxide, then potassium hydroxide. Remember this order. Then rubidium hydroxide, Rb, rubidium hydroxide, and then we have cesium hydroxide, CSOH. If you move this way, the basic character is increasing. Basic character increases. Remember this. The basic character increases. Okay. Why does it increase? Because more metallic, more metallic, more metallic. The most metallic is cesium. So metallic character is increasing. That's why the basic character is also increasing. Okay. Now, if you look at the solubility, the metallic character is increasing means in a similar way for these hydroxides, again, if you move this way from left to right, okay, from lithium hydroxide towards cesium hydroxide, the solubility also increases. Solubility increases. Solubility also increases when you move from lithium hydroxide to cesium hydroxide. Note that the hydroxides of alkali metals are of the type LiOH, NaOH, and they behave as strong bases. Okay. Alkali metal hydroxides are fairly soluble in water. The solubility of these hydroxides increases in going down the group, that is from lithium towards cesium hydroxide. Okay. Now, if you look at the next slide over here, with respect to the what you call the carbonates, solubility and stability of carbonates, solubility and stability of carbonates, then I can write down their order over here. Solubility is given in weight over here. Let me write down lithium Li2CO3, lithium carbonate. Its solubility in percentage by weight, it is given at 298 Kelvin, 1.3. Then we have sodium Na2CO3. its solubility is given 22.5. Okay. Then we have potassium carbonate. Potassium carbonate solubility is given 52.9 percentage by weight. Okay, percentage by weight. Okay. Then we have rubidium, Rb2CO3. Its solubility in percentage by weight is given 70%. Then we have cesium carbonate, Cs2CO3. Its solubility is given 74% by weight. So when you look at the carbonates of these elements of the first group, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, the solubility in water is increasing. Because what is the reason? The carbonates of alkali metals are quite stable towards heat. Like for example, this lithium carbonate, if you look at lithium carbonate, it is least stable and decomposes on slight heating. The carbonates of other alkali metals over here are quite stable and do not decompose on heating. The lesser stability of lithium carbonate is again because of what? Its anomalous behavior. It has small size. It has small size of what? The lithium ion which is formed, it has a small size, Li+1. It has a small size. Okay. And it is unable to stabilize. This small lithium ion, it is not able to stabilize the large size carbonate ion. That is why it is unstable. Other alkali metals like sodium, potassium, rubidium, and cesium, they are larger in size and can effectively stabilize the carbonate, the large size carbonate ion. That is why other alkali metals carbonates are quite stable. Okay. Now this was the discussion of periodic table in the properties of compounds of alkali metals till now. Now moving to the next slide over here. Let me introduce one more slide over here. Talking about the basic character and solubility of hydroxides. Basic character and solubility of hydroxides of the alkaline earth metals. If you look at the alkaline earth metals, they form hydroxides. Now, for example, if I write down the formula of beryllium hydroxide, BeOH2, okay, then I can write down magnesium hydroxide also, MgOH2. Then I can have calcium hydroxide, CaOH2. Then I can have the calcium is strontium hydroxide. Then I can have barium hydroxide. Okay. If you look at their character over here, beryllium hydroxide is amphoteric. It is amphoteric. Okay. Magnesium hydroxide is what? It is weakly basic. You can say it is weakly basic. Then this is strong. This is strong. Calcium and strontium, they are strongly basic, because these are hydroxides are metals. So metals form mostly basic character. Then the last one is barium hydroxide. It is very strongly basic in nature. Okay, so here you have to remember this order. The basic character is increasing this way. Basic character is increasing this way. Basic character increases when you move from beryllium hydroxide to barium hydroxide. Now, talking about the solubility of the sulfates of these group 2 elements. If I talk about the group 2 elements, the solubility, then we have beryllium sulfate. It is fairly soluble. It is fairly soluble. It is fairly soluble. Then we have magnesium sulfate. Magnesium sulfate. It is just soluble. It is simply soluble. Then we have calcium sulfate. It is sparingly soluble. Sparingly soluble. It is sparingly soluble. Then we have strontium sulfate and barium sulfate. These two are insoluble. These two are what? Insoluble. Now, if we move from beryllium sulfate to barium sulfate, what is happening? The solubility is decreasing. Solubility, it is decreasing from beryllium sulfate to barium sulfate. The reason over here, please remember, the metallic character is increasing. The metallic character is increasing. So here, remember, uh, beryllium sulfate is fairly soluble. Then magnesium sulfate is soluble. calcium sulfate is sparingly soluble, and strontium and barium sulfate is insoluble. Okay. Now, this is the order. Thus, the solubility of the sulfates decreases in going down the group from beryllium to barium. Now, if you talk about the solubility and stability of carbonates, the solubility and stability. Now, barium carbonate requires a very high temperature. Let's look at the temperature. The decomposition temperature for beryllium carbonate is, it is less than 373 Kelvin. Okay. For magnesium carbon, the temperature required is 803 Kelvin to decompose. For calcium carbonate, the temperature required to decompose is 1173 Kelvin. For strontium carbonate, the temperature required to decompose is 1563 Kelvin. And for barium carbonate, the temperature required to decompose is almost 1635 Kelvin. So, if you move from beryllium carbonate to barium carbonate, the temperature, the decomposition temperatures is, it is what? It is increasing, which means beryllium carbonate is what? It is, this one is more stable, this one is more stable, and this one is least stable, STABL, least stable towards heat. Okay, so this completes your chapter today, that is the periodic properties, classification of elements and periodicity in properties. Now, I would like to request you all to kindly go through the question answers, the short question answers from the textbook. At the back of the textbook, you will find plenty of very short questions along with the answers and the fill in the blanks, the multiple objective, multiple choice questions. There are around, there are around say 49-50 questions for that. And please don't forget to go to the true or false questions as well. Okay, so this completes your chapter 3, that is periodic properties, classification of elements and periodicity in properties. Okay, now I would like to end my class over here, but before ending the class, I will have to take the attendance. Please hang on over there for some time. Okay, now your attendance list is being downloaded. It is downloaded. Now you may leave the class. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.